Will you commit to publicly providing the unredacted version of this so that the American people can understand the extent of Donald Trump's lies about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
You're about as good of a lawyer today as you were when you tried to impeach President Trump in 2016. Have you apologized for that in 2019?
So will you unredact this? Will you unredact this?
You were lead counsel on that. Privileged.
I'm asking you, will you unredact this?
Privileged.
Privileged, of course. I look forward to discussing this more. Now, these are obviously improper redactions.
And let me stop for a minute.
I'm talking.
If they're not privileged,
quiet.
Don't yell at me. If they're not
Mr. Chairman, would you stop the clock? This is on your time. It's not on Mr. Goldman.
They're not
Even though
privileged,
you used your improper redactions,
you'll like my answer.
to
if we
continue
review them
to
and they're not
protect
privileged,
Donald
Time belongs
Trump.
to the member.
We'll be happy to release them.
We'll stop the clock. We'll stop the clock. Time belongs to the member. Go ahead.
Even though you used improper redactions to protect Donald Trump and other predators associated with Jeffrey Epstein, you did the exact opposite thing with the survivors and victims of this scheme. So their identification information was really the only thing required to be redacted, and it was not.
That email existed. No attorney-client privilege, no legal cover, just the Attorney General of the United States refusing to release a document that showed Donald Trump's own words about Jeffrey Epstein. And she said it once, then said it again. Privileged, that's the whole defense. One word, repeated, while Epstein's victims sat in the room behind her. If you want this tracked every day, hit subscribe, because now watch how Moskowitz built to that moment.
The most transparent administration in American history. Before Trump, we didn't know the word transparency, apparently. It's been 12 months since you gave Republican influencers part 1 of the Epstein files. You said the list was on your desk. Then a memo came out and said that there was no list. Phase 2 of the binders never happened. The President of the United States says the Epstein thing is a hoax. He blasts his own base for wanting the release of the files. He blamed Barack Obama. Republicans voted against the release of the files in the Rules Committee. Then they refused to even return to the Rules Committee until they could be protected from future votes on the release. Speaker Johnson sends Congress home a day early before break. They sent the Deputy Attorney General to meet with Maxwell. She says something favorable about the president. Miraculously, she gets transferred to a minimum security facility. No one can explain why. Miraculously, the leaks to the Wall Street Journal stop. We come back from break. We have the Massey discharge petition. Republicans drop a rule, a non-binding resolution trying to kill the Massey discharge petition. The White House says passing the Massey discharge petition is a hostile act. Trying to stop the necessary 218 signatures, according to Republican members that signed it, the White House brought them into the Situation Room, you know, the place where the president goes for time of war, promising things like appropriations or maybe even to primary them. People in the room say you were there. It didn't work. We get the 218 signatures. We eventually passed the Massey petition. You guys didn't release the files. You were forced by Congress. Every member of the House except one, and the entire Senate. The reason the president signed it is because it was a veto-proof majority. We can't agree on anything, and yet the entire House but one member and the whole Senate forced the administration to release the files. Kash Patel under oath said to Senator Kennedy, the FBI is not in possession of any credible evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone but himself. We know now that's not true. According to documents, Epstein had a worldwide sex trafficking ring. Girls from Poland, Czechoslovakia, Russia, Paris, modeling agencies sending him girls. He even had a relationship with a summer camp where he groomed girls at a picnic table. Ghislaine Maxwell says 29 Epstein associates cut secret DOJ deals. Turns out there is a list. 6 names readily available if you unredact them. Co-conspirators named, but we got them when you unredact them. Maxwell recently tells a House Oversight Committee that she wants clemency to release more names. Kash Patel under oath said Trump's name appears less than 100 times in the files. We now know that's not true. Trump's name appears more times in the Epstein files than God's name appears in the book about God. Okay, by the way, this is the Trump Bible. Move over, King James. Trump's name also appears more times in the Epstein file than Harry Potter's name appears in the 7 books about Harry Potter. Lutnick says that in 2008, he went to Epstein's home, says he had a massage table in the living room, that Epstein said he got one every day, that it was the right type of massage. He and his wife decide to leave and say they'll never be in a room with him again. Howard then says, I'm sure the Epstein stuff is all on video. He was the greatest blackmailer of all time. Well, how would Howard know that? But now the files are public, and in 2012, we found out that he and his family are on Epstein Island after Epstein pled guilty to state charges. I'm from Florida. I take my family to Disney World, not to Epstein Island. There are documents in the files that dispute the president's claim that he kicked Epstein out of his club. Allegedly, the president said that he asked Epstein to leave. Supported now, that's disputed, though, statements from the manager of the club. Now, Madam Attorney General, I have like 25 seconds left. So because I'm curious, and I'd like to see you flip to the Jared Moskowitz section of the binder. I'm interested to see what staff provided on the oppo on me, and because we're in the Olympics, I'm going to give it a grade. I just want to see how good it is. So give me your best one.
So first of all, nothing is funny about mocking the Bible and holding up a Trump Bible. That's what you did. You made a joke, and I find offense to that. That's all I have to say.
I want it from the burn book.
Shame.
I want it from the burn book. Which is the best one? What you got?
Ms. Bondi, I went over to the department yesterday for a couple of hours to review some of the unredacted materials. And I am looking forward to your detailed explanation for why you have withheld almost half of the documents, which is required by the bill. Now, obviously, there are 3 million documents, so I didn't get through much. But one thing I didn't see was the client list that you said you had on your desk a year ago. I did, however, find a couple of important documents. An 86-page prosecution memo from the Southern District of New York and a draft indictment from Florida against Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators. For reasons that I cannot understand nor are permitted by the bill, they were still redacted, even for members of Congress. So, Ms. Bondi, will you commit right here to immediately providing those 2 documents in unredacted form to members of Congress? Not a complicated question.
Well, I guess it is for you because you have a law degree and those are privileged.
Okay, they're not privileged, but we will discuss that later. I also found an email that I have right here from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell that was unredacted, and it included notes of statements that Donald Trump made about his prior relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, there is no reason for this to be hidden from the American people. There is no privilege, there is no attorney-client privilege, and I see you're checking with your staff, and I can assure you, staff, this is not under attorney-client privilege because it was sent from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell.
Bondi called it a circus. She called it theatrics. She called it privilege. What she never called it was answered. Moskowitz asked her straight, "Will you unredact the Trump-Epstein email?" She said privileged. He asked again, privileged. Survivors in that room behind her, every single one had reached out to the DOJ, every single one was denied or ignored, and while those victims' names were plastered across public documents, the names of the men who paid for access were blacked out. That is not an accident. Moskowitz said so directly. The record backs him up.
Now, in an interview last week...
How will you tell me that's intentional?
In an interview last week, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche
You can't go off script.
said that any victim that wants to speak with the department has done so, hopefully. Well, thanks to the incredibly brave people sitting here behind you, we can actually ask them if that's true. Now, would the survivors and victims who are here please stand up one more time? Just by show of hands, how many of you or your loved ones actually have met with the Department of Justice and provided testimony and evidence? None. And of those of you who have not met, which is everyone, how many of you have reached out either individually or through a lawyer or representative to offer to provide testimony and evidence? All of them. And of those of you, all of you, who have reached out, how many of you were denied or ignored by the Department of Justice? All of them. And despite the shameful and despicable efforts by Ms. Bondi and her department to intimidate you, how many of you are still willing to speak to the Department of Justice?
Pam Bondi is gone. Trump fired her on April 2nd. The reason? He was unhappy with her Epstein handling. The woman who promised the client list was on her desk. The woman who declared it privileged when asked to release a Trump-Epstein email. The woman whose department exposed abuse survivors while protecting the men who paid for access to them. Now she is dodging a congressional subpoena. Her deposition was scheduled for April 14th. She canceled. Democrats have threatened contempt. The survivors are still waiting. They reached out to the DOJ. They were denied. They reached out again. They were ignored. And then they sat in that hearing room and watched the Attorney General of the United States refuse, in real time, to answer for any of it. Bondi called it a circus. The survivors called it their lives. That clip is not going away. And neither is the question she never answered. Why was Trump's name in that email, and why did she work so hard to keep it hidden?